He gives 18 months for all white-collar work, including legal, to be automated by AI.
The time horizons are shrinking. We're now thinking about it in terms of months.
They were deciding between hiring a trainee or using AI, and they actually went with the AI.
I think we are going to see a tidal wave take out a lot of legal tech startups in the near future.
I don't think people actually realize how big of a step that is.
The people who used to publish the law reports are now becoming competitors to Google. Now law is becoming the battleground for these big players. They are stepping into the legal arena.
I don't want to know about technology, but I feel like now people just don't really have much of a choice.
The train has come into the station. It's here for 30 seconds, and you have the choice either to get on the train or to be left behind.
I want to know what you think, because you've got me hooked. In this episode, I'm talking with Alexander Cardoz-Nieheim. He was the founder and CEO of SafeSign Technologies, which was acquired by Thomson Reuters. He's now the co-lead of AI research at Thomson Reuters, and he also sits as the senior director in Thomson Reuters Labs. For anyone curious about the future of law, AI, and market power, this conversation reveals the stakes no one else is talking about. Okay, so Alexander, I'm very excited to have this chat with you because we're going to do something that I've never actually done on this podcast before, which is look at some of the legal tech news, AI, law-related news, and kind of discuss it, but also obviously talk more about legal tech more broadly and what you're doing and the role that you play in the industry, which I think is very important and very interesting.
I look forward to hearing these pieces of news.
Okay, so I'm going to dive into the first one, which is Harvey had hired Harvey Specter or signed Harvey Specter in like a brand collaboration. And at first I was really confused because of the way that they posted it. They said, we're partnering with, and then the name of the actor. And I don't know the name of the actor. And so I was like, who's this? It looks like a big deal, but I don't know who this is. So then I Googled this person and it came up with Harvey Specter. And I was like, oh, amazing. But why didn't you just say Harvey Specter? But what do you think about that as a concept in legal tech?
I think it's very interesting because it represents a shift from Harvey, from being focused on this very sort of slick professional grade focus, which is very heavily oriented towards the technology narrative, the robustness of their systems, the legal grounding, towards a celebrity focus, basically, where I think what Harvey realizes is that they've now occupied enough of the mind space in the more conventional industry narratives, and there's now an opportunity for them to be even more aggressive and adventurous by doing a move like this. It's, I think, a move that Harvey are uniquely placed to make, as they are a startup. They have this agility, the fact that they're not coming after 150 years of history in previous iterations of their company. They're a new company. But equally, I think what this means is competitors to Harvey, like Legora, may start to pull some stunts like this as well. And I look forward to seeing what the counter reaction is. But I wouldn't expect a similar reaction from the likes of Lexis or Thomson Reuters, simply because these are, I wouldn't say more serious companies at all, but I'd say more legacy established companies that have a reputation already within the minds of lawyers from law school onwards. And I think they're more focused on being sort of appearing like the grown-ups in the room. But again, it's all about how you position yourself. And there's advantages and disadvantages to all of these different personas.
It's really interesting actually getting your perspective on that, because for me, I didn't even think about the fact that, you've got these other companies and brands that are more kind of legacy type ones, as you say. I thought it was more like legal tech is making a shift into more mainstream, because this is like your classic influencer marketing or brand collaboration, which has happened for so many years, so many years. So it's an interesting change.
It's really interesting. And just on your point about legal tech becoming more mainstream and part of public discourse, I think we're seeing a general shift where legal tech is moving from being a niche area where lawyers have some tech solutions to one where the big players, the likes of Google, DeepMind, OpenAI, Anthropic, and we'll talk about this later, see law increasingly as the battleground for who has the best model, because law is such a good test. It puts your systems through their paces. So the big tech companies see law as their battleground. Of course, throughout society, we also have ideas, thanks to shows like Suits, about what lawyers do, and law has a certain reputation that way. So it's interesting to see in legal tech terms how law is now becoming the centerpiece for so many of these different strands that it previously didn't.
Absolutely, yeah. Each week, I take what I'm hearing in conversations with legal leaders. I analyse the market and track emerging trends in this AI era. In my newsletter called The Future Lawyer Market Intel for the AI Era, I'm focused on what AI is exposing, the opportunities, the blind spots, and the shifts shaping the next 5 years. This is how you see the chessboard before everyone else does. I think I'd love to dive into that topic more because I think it is such an interesting shift, and I just think it's crazy what's actually happening. But what do you think about, so the fact that Harvey has done this, I think this really makes a stamp on the industry, and it's a bold statement as well. Do you think other companies, forget Lexis and these more legacy companies that, the way that you put it, what about other companies, other startups, legal tech? Do you think it puts pressure on them to think more innovatively, have a different vision, because they're all focusing on this is how you can become more efficient in your work? But I think that's kind of old news now, because companies, in-house legal teams are creating their own tech. They are doing their own, I don't know, creating their own cultures around AI. So when legal tech companies say, okay, we can make you more efficient, we can make your workflows better, it's kind of like, well, we can also do that.
Yeah, I think the pursuit of differentiation is becoming more and more intense. As you say, competitors used to think in different terms. They think, well, we're going to have more features than the other, we're going to have a better core technology than the other. These remain crucial points. And I should also add, just before we talk about this latest Harvey move, that what I've noticed is that the time horizons for a lot of these legal tech startups, in terms of where they see their competitive moat, their time horizons are shrinking. So they used to think, as a legal tech startup, how do we remain relevant and dominant and become dominant in a year's time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? We're now thinking about it in terms of months, because it's so easy now to create new features. The barriers to entry have become so low, it becomes much easier to outmaneuver another player than it ever used to be. So then the question becomes, okay, let's say you're a Harvey and you think you're winning on some of the features, you think you're winning on some of the core technology. What else can you do? And I think what they've done is to throw in a completely new axis here of competition, which is more occupying even more of the mind share, being a little bit wacky. So it's a move that I think, yes, it comes across as a little bit unusual. Some people might think it's a bit silly. I suspect it's a very well thought out move. And the fact that we're talking about it is already paying testament to the fact that it's paying off for them, because it's occupying our thoughts. So I look forward to seeing what the other competitors do. Of course, Harvey always had that advantage that was their name. And their namesake, of course, was the most well-known figure in legal TV ever. But I'm sure Legora has something up its sleeve as well.
I'm excited to see it. I'm sure this was planned, way in advance, but I know Legora did the thing where they were like, okay, we're going to put our name on one of the golfers' shirts or something. I feel like this is like a counter reaction, but it's probably just been timed that way kind of coincidentally. I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, it seems like there's this this battle. Okay, we're going to make this move. We're going to make this move. Like, what's the next move going to be? Anyway, I will move on to the next piece of news that caught my attention. It's kind of like old news in terms of everybody's saying this, but I would love to get your opinion. So recently, the chief of AI at Microsoft said that he gives 18 months for all white collar work, including legal and accountancy and a few other industries. He gives them 18 months to be automated by AI. Bold statement. Many people are saying AI is going to replace lawyers. What do you think?
I think people like to make bold statements. I've lost count of the number of bold statements I've heard that try to predict the direction of law and other industries with AI. I also think that there's been much more interesting commentary than anything I could say about this. But what I would say is already we're seeing AI being used as a reason for significant reductions in personnel. We had the move from Baker McKenzie a couple of weeks ago, where about 10% of their workforce, mostly support staff, were removed due to AI. Now, that was a reason given by the company, by the firm. I think probably it's a mixture of the fact that a lot of these big firms, especially British firms, need to become a bit leaner in their business model with increased competition from American firms within their normal home markets, including the UK and Europe. So I think these big British firms were scheduled to make some reductions anyway. I think AI presents a good opportunity to make such reductions. So I would just caveat, any time I hear a law firm saying we're replacing our lawyers or support staff with AI, I think there was going to be reductions anyway because the traditional business models of a lot of these law firms was quite inefficient. So just moving that out of the way, the question then becomes, right, aside from the people that you were going to reduce or remove anyway because of the inefficiencies within your firm and the need to compete with American firms, what else will the impact of AI be on your firms? There is, of course, a certain amount of irreplaceable items that a law firm is going to struggle to replace with AI. So an example would be reputation, relationships with their clients, the commercial know-how that senior partners have that enables them to navigate deals well and help clients make deals. So that's all at the very cutting edge end of the spectrum. And I think most people agree that that's not invulnerable to AI, but that's relatively, it'll be the last to go, should we say. So then the next question becomes, for everyone else below them in that pyramid, for all the skills that are seen as you get more junior in the firm, can those be replaced by AI? And I think the answer is yes. The sheer power of these large language models, in particular the reasoning models that are coming out, they have so much power that even without much legal training, they are naturally very good at law. They're very good at legal reasoning. They're very good at reaching conclusions with a robust line of statements that lead to that conclusion. And therefore, it's going to become, I've spoken to several partners at major firms who've said that they prefer to use an AI model to generate the first draft of their memo rather than an associate that would take 5 days to do it and maybe would do a slightly better job, but not that much better. So there's going to be a relationship of replacement at the more junior end of firms. We're already seeing this. I think we're going to start to see smaller cohorts of trainees being let in, and we're going to start to see a higher barrier to entry and qualification from the trainee stage to the associate stage. And frankly, lawyers will just need to be even better. The standards will need to be even higher, because if you are a lawyer and you need to be able to compete and grapple with an AI model that is already so good, you're going to have to be an even better lawyer. So there will be fewer lawyers, but I think there are some things when it comes to reputation and relationships, and of course the need to train these juniors to eventually become the partners, that mean that I don't think we're going to see these big firms replacing all their lawyers or even very large amounts of their lawyers with AI models in the near future. Two other points I would make, though, to caveat that. The first is that law firms will increasingly realize that the data they hold, the historical know-how that they have that defines the Skadden way of doing things, the Linklaters way of doing things, they will increasingly turn all of that know-how into machine-readable data that will help them to train custom models that will eventually become the AI embodiment of Skadden, the AI embodiment of Linklaters. So we are going to see that move. And law firms changing into hybrid technology companies with a lot of data rather than very personnel heavy. But I think that's going to take quite some time. And the other big caveat I'd say is smaller players, some small to mid-sized firms that historically didn't have AI that didn't have the capability, the manpower to deal with big deals, with big matters, will use AI as a force multiplier to be able to punch above their weight and take on bigger matters than they were previously able to. So we're going to see this at the smaller end of the market, I think, more aggressive moves in the direction of AI. And at the larger end, we're going to see a more gradual transition. 18 months, who knows? Maybe in 6 months, something crazy is going to happen. Maybe in 4 years, something crazy is going to happen. I'm reluctant to take these arbitrary time horizons because, as I said before, I've heard too many.
That's such a great point, actually. This conversation is absolutely fascinating to me, and it's brilliant to hear your perspective, actually, because you have a very unique perspective. Because in law, but you're in tech, you've had the experience of a trainee you're in a very, very unique situation, and it's great hearing your perspective. What I wanted to say, on the timescale, things are moving super, super fast. And when we, spoke in November, December, do you remember we mentioned the things that we could talk about now in a podcast, as in December, will probably rapidly change in the next literally 1 month or 2 months. So it's just wild. And I think also things are changing, like with this Harvey thing that we've just discussed, that's a massive change, a massive shift. I don't think people actually realize how big of a step that is in the industry in terms of like positioning, marketing, more generalization, not it going from very legal specific industry to a more global mainstream type approach, because everybody knows who Harvey Specter is. Loads of people watch Suits. It's just huge. I think people don't actually realize. I Googled this morning, this news. There's nothing pretty much on Google. It's only in some legal news, but it's not reached the mainstream market. But this is a mainstream move. So I think things are going to change with that. But also, I wanted to say about the trainee thing. I spoke to the director of legal at Skyscanner, And she told me that she was speaking to another lawyer who said that at a law firm, they were deciding between hiring a trainee or using AI or investing in AI. And they actually went with the AI. But the trainee, she said the trainee, it was like it wasn't like a generic thing like, oh, should we hire a trainee or should we use AI? They actually had a specific trainee in mind who had gone through an interview process who was actually great for the job. But they were like, no, we're going to use it. We're going to go with the AI instead. So I think you are spot on. It's happening. But what do trainees do then? What do you think about that? Like, how do they become competitive? How do they get into the legal industry if it's becoming more competitive than ever? What do they do? What would you do?
If you're already a trainee or you already have a training contract secured, then I think you are lucky because you are in one of the last cohorts that will not be fundamentally impacted in terms of selection by AI. So that's an opportunity. Now the question becomes, how do you become a sort of a competitive must-retain trainee? You must not just be good at the law. You need to show your firm that you are going to be part of the generation that transforms it and keeps it alive and successful in the AI era. So if you're lucky enough to have a computer science background, great, absolutely maximize that. But if you don't, I think you need to be upskilling yourself on AI, not just on understanding what an LLM is or on prompt engineering, but on really thinking about how does the work you do within your seat as a trainee, are there opportunities for automation already? I suspect that I have many friends who are now associates in firms who see some heavy manual process. And because they happen to know a bit about AI, they've been proposing solutions within the firm and they've been creating efficiencies there. So if you can create, I think there's never been a greater opportunity as a trainee to create significant value for your firm by spotting an inefficiency and upskilling yourself on how you might help to solve that with AI or working with the innovation team within your firm to try to solve that. So there's an opportunity within all of this chaos for trainees to actually add a lot of value, more so than maybe they would have ever managed to add previously. Now, if we take a step back and we think, well, let's say we're not a trainee yet, or we're looking for jobs, and how can we remain relevant to law firms? I would make the same argument. The lawyers of the future are going to have to be sort of half lawyers, half AI, if not engineers, then experts. And this is something that I've struggled with. I don't have a computer science background, but I founded an AI research company. And the reason I was able to do that was I surrounded myself with very clever people who were in AI. And I really tried to bridge the gap between the pure science and the pure legal challenges. And so many of those bridges have not been built yet. So many of the connections have not been made. So if as a trainee or as an applicant, you're able to demonstrate that you have that versatility in your mind and that enough knowledge of both the law and AI that you can be one of those people that makes those connections, then I think you're going to be very successful as a lawyer. But the onus is back on the trainee now to become even more valuable, to put in even more work, as if it wasn't already hard enough. So I don't envy people, but there's also an opportunity in all of this.
Yes, there is definitely opportunity, but I think probably a lot of people, well, this is what I would be thinking anyway if I was about to become a trainee or whatever. It would be how unfair. I don't like AI. I like law. I don't want to have to combine two things. I just want to focus on law because I enjoy understanding legislation and cases and these things. I don't want to know about technology. But I feel like now just people just don't really have much of a choice, I think.
Well, it's like the train has come into the station and it's here for 30 seconds and you have the choice either to get on the train or to be left behind at the station. And you just have to pick. It sounds really tough, but we are at one of those periods in history where we have to make these decisions. Do we try to resist inevitable fundamental change to our society and how we do things? Or do we go with it and just try our best to redirect it and keep it human and keep it beneficial and try to be involved in the next stage of things? It depends on your personality. It depends on how on your risk appetite and all the rest. But I have a fair amount of hope, though, that these new cohorts of trainees who've now had maybe ChatGPT already involved in their legal education, they have some mental versatility already built in that will equip them well to deal with these challenges. But I mean, I'm very sympathetic to that view as well, that it's a bit unfair.
I love your analogy. You can either get on that train or you can just wait at the station and who knows when the next train might come.
If it comes.
Exactly, exactly. I'd like to jump into the anthropic news, which may even be behind the times when people are listening to this, but I think it's a pivotal moment in legal tech history. I don't know if that's like a bold statement, but I really think it is. And I think the reason for that is because you take like a general tech solution or software like OpenAI or Anthropic, and they start creating a tool which could automate legal work through, contract reviewing, workflows, templates, creating things like that for legal, which dictated what happened with the stock market for other companies as a result. I think that's quite a huge step. A general tech company saying we're now going to introduce legal solutions.
It's fundamental, but it also isn't so fundamental. So I think it was very interesting to see how the market reacted to Anthropic's decision to launch a legal tech tool. As you said, there was a significant period of volatility that followed. The share prices of some of the big existing players, like the parent company of LexisNexis, as well as Thomson Reuters, the share prices fell. Why did they fall? They fell because of a market realization that the big tech players that have so far powered legal tech behind the scenes are now moving to become legal tech competitors themselves. This structural shift is not new. We have seen Microsoft do the acqui-hire of half of Robin AI's team. This was the struggling startup that was sort of saved through a couple of acquisitions. And that I think should be quite interesting to people. And it didn't really go, it was mentioned in the industry press, but never really explored. Why does Microsoft want to acquire half of a legal tech startup? In particular, it was the lawyers who they acquired. So I think a company like Microsoft realizes, almost by accident, we are fundamental to how lawyers do their jobs. They operate within the Microsoft suite. They exchange red lines. They operate in Outlook. So Microsoft's move, I think, a few months ago should have been a clear indication of this structural shift. Even longer ago than that, OpenAI's release of the DocuGPT feature, which is a contract review version of one of its models, again oriented towards law, as well as a lot of other OpenAI features that are very similar to this Anthropic one, that went relatively unnoticed. It didn't cause this massive share price fluctuation. That also indicates a similar move from a big tech player to occupy some legal tech space. And then finally, we have companies like Google DeepMind, the actual developers of the LLMs, going into big law firms and having custom model training relationships where they train versions of Gemini, let's say, on know-how of those firms to give those firms a custom LLM. So we've seen these moves happen already. It was always the Achilles heel of much of the legal tech industry that it relied on someone else for its core technology. I use this F1 metaphor a lot. I don't know if it works, but it's like so much of legal tech is focused on the chassis, on what everything looks like, on the aerodynamic features of the vehicle. But the actual core engine in legal tech has been provided by 4 or 5 companies based in Silicon Valley that suddenly realized, why don't we make some money in legal tech too? These big tech players, which were previously horizontal, are realizing that they can, instead of providing the core technology and allowing other people to come and wrap around their core models in their cloud and make money in certain verticals, they realized we should be verticalizing ourselves. We had already seen this in pharma, drug discovery, with Google Scientist, and it appears that law is the next target. Law used to be the testing ground, where a lot of these big AI providers would lightly test their models in the legal setting because they knew that law is such a demanding field and it's a good testing ground for their models. But now law is becoming the battleground for these big players. They are stepping into the legal arena, and the likes of Anthropic and Google, DeepMind, and OpenAI are going to become direct competitors. The question then becomes, what about the existing players within legal tech? What do they do? I think for the most part, it's a pretty tough challenge, because if you don't have your own core technology, and the one who was providing you with your core technology is suddenly your competitor, you're going to find that Achilles heel is becoming a real vulnerability, and you were basically relying on a hidden competitor to power your own product. So I think we are going to see a tidal wave take out a lot of legal tech startups in the near future. The defensibility point, which we can discuss a bit later in more detail, is going to be around the proprietary data you have. Do you have high quality legal data and expertise that these big tech players don't have, that makes your models or your systems and products more robust and reliable? But also, crucially, do you have the capability to develop your own model? You don't have to use someone else's model. If you have the resources and the people, the scientific expertise to train your own model on legal data, you can beat them at their own game. And within Thomson Reuters, this is what my job is. That's why they acquired my startup. There will presumably be other players thinking about doing the same thing. But I think the battleground is going to shift in that direction.
It's really great to hear your side of things, and I would love to hear more about your startup, and because we're on this topic, because I think it's very interesting actually what has happened in terms of you've created your own kind of system which competes with these other, what would you call them?
I would call them AI model developers like Google DeepMind, OpenAI, Anthropic.
Yes, you're kind of competing with that, but then Thomson Reuters saw that and was like, we want to invest in that. I'd love to hear more of that story and journey.
Thomson Reuters, as we all know, it's been an information company historically with a strong technology focus, but it's, I think, increasingly realized that it needs to transform itself into a technology company because it saw coming over the horizon. I don't think anyone in Thomson Reuters at the executive level was surprised by the Anthropic move, even if the market was. So they saw these big players coming over the horizon, and they thought, why is it only that 4 or 5 companies in the world are able to develop their own large language models? Isn't this a bit of a vulnerability? And that was just an internal note that was in the minds of the key decision makers at Thomson Reuters. Totally separately, I had started this AI research company out of Cambridge and MIT, where I was very lucky to have this brilliant set of scientists out of Google DeepMind and other places who had been working on the big AI models. This team had come together with me to say, well, these big models are great, but they're not focused on safety, robustness, reliability in the same way that lawyers, for example, would care about. There are certain areas of the economy that are so complex and high stakes that a generic, non-specialized large language model will not give you the reliability you need to actually achieve efficiencies in your industry. If lawyers can never trust an AI model to do the job of an associate almost perfectly, these AI models are not actually going to make us more efficient because we're going to spend all our time checking their outputs, being scared about whether we're exposing ourselves to liabilities by using them, etc. So the idea was, in my startup, what if I combined some amazing scientific talent from these big AI labs with a special focus on safety and reliability, with my own knowledge as a lawyer, and with some of my law professors out of Cambridge as well, who were mad enough to join me on the project. And what if we create a specialized AI research company that develops LLMs for law from the ground up, grounded in legal reasoning, focused on achieving the reliability that lawyers need to achieve whatever it is that they need to achieve. What was unique was that because of the quality of our data that we were creating, because of our expertise, we were basically getting these law professors to test our model and train it as if it was a PhD candidate for law. So we were really putting the model through its paces with this really deliberate focus on law. We found that we were able to outmaneuver and outcompete the likes of DeepMind, Meta, Anthropic on a shoestring budget, simply because we had some brilliant scientists with some very good algorithmic innovations they were making that gave us that edge. But also, we just had such a rigorous approach to legal training for the model that it just became very good. And then we suddenly thought, well, why are we doing this in secret? Let's publish some news about ourselves. And very quickly, venture capital and Thomson Reuters got involved and said, this is a game changer in the legal setting. We don't have a player like this. We have Harveys who take an OpenAI model and build a beautiful UI and UX around it, but we don't have a company in the legal tech industry that is actually developing models from the ground up, because everyone just uses whatever OpenAI releases or whatever Meta or DeepMind release or Anthropic. So we are the only player in the legal tech industry that actually developed its own models. And Thomson Reuters thought, it's a huge company, it has the resources, it has some amazing legal data, the authoritative data in the industry. The Lexus might have a claim to some of that as well. And it thought, what if we combine all of our Thomson Reuters data with this very effective large language model that my startup had developed? And the outcome is now what's called the Thomson LLM. It's still an experimental model. It's still a tough fight. We're fighting against multi-trillion-dollar companies here, the likes of Google. But we're hopeful that even within this David and Goliath sort of struggle, we have, because of the quality of our data and the effectiveness of our scientists, we have a pretty good chance at beating them. And in fact, we are already beating these big players on a lot of criteria that are important to law firms. So that's how the acquisition came about. And now I co-lead AI research at Thomson Reuters. I think what is interesting is to see how not just Thomson Reuters, but companies like it are rapidly transforming into technology companies away from what they've historically been over the last 150 years. The people who used to publish the law reports are now becoming competitors to Google. And who would have thought that would ever happen?
Wow, it's so great to hear that story. And it is such an incredible story. I don't even know how, you came up with that idea like, oh, let's just try and build this, or let's come up with some ideas for this. And then I don't know how you went from that to where you are now. It just sounds amazing and very forward thinking, very innovative, and difficult. It sounds very difficult as well.
It definitely was. It was challenging, but I was very lucky to have some investors willing to take some huge risks, some team members prepared to walk away from amazing jobs at top AI labs and top institutions. It was a lot of leaps of faith. I think a little bit of internal craziness that we all had as a team that just thought, let's just take the risk and let's try it out. And I'm happy to say it paid off. But of course, it didn't work until it worked. And until then, there were a lot of very dark days, a lot of very, very tense moments. But I'm happy that's all behind us and that we can now focus on the science rather than survival.
What does your AI research involve then now?
It involves training our startup's large language model on on Westlaw, practical law, on Reuters News. We have hundreds of lawyers who help to train our model from within Thomson Reuters. So the people who update Westlaw and practical law are now also helping us to train our model. And we evaluate our model. We retrain it very often, and we evaluate it against the latest Gemini model, the latest OpenAI model, the latest Claude model, because those are our competitors. And we always have to remain ahead of those. Our objective and the reason we were required is to create a material difference between our model and any other model in the world for law. So my job is to make sure that our model is the best LLM on the planet for lawyers. That's a tough ask, but we're making some strides, and we've already had some successful interactions with law firms, some good trials, and we're getting very positive feedback from the market. So I look forward to seeing this properly released to the market eventually, and to giving, Harvey's been occupying a lot of our mind space, but I'd like my startup's LLM to start occupying some mind space too. So I guess we'll see.
I think obviously what stands out and what you probably should, well, you probably already thought about this, but tap into is the fact that, Harvey's is based on, I'm probably wording this wrong, so apologies, is based on OpenAI, like you say, whereas yours is very specific to legal, and that's what's the differentiator here. And who knows if that's what law firms will value more. I really don't know, but I guess you know better than me. But also, when you weigh up these big legal tech companies like Harvey, who are making big moves, like bringing in a celebrity, and against you, that's a hard road to go down. That's a hard competition for your side.
Crazy. It's, I think, becoming the most competitive market. AI was already the most competitive market in the world. Now legal tech is becoming the new battleground for a lot of AI. So it's going to be crazy. And yes, Harvey's a very, it's not to be overlooked. I think Harvey's a different kind of player though. Harvey uses other people's models and focuses on workflows. We are developing the core engine. I think Harvey is more a competitor to CoCounsel than what our model does. But I think law firms will initially just try to buy everything and just see what works. I think by the time we see law firms picking one major provider over another, some time will pass. Like most law firms have always had a subscription to Westlaw and LexisNexis. They didn't always have to pick. So I think we're going to see a bit of hedging. Eventually, we'll see some consolidation, some choices being made. And in the meantime, if I need to go and hire some influencers and celebrities, I better get my skates on.
Yeah, you better start thinking outside the box because Suits is taken.
It's just taken, yeah. Okay, well, in our next conversation, I'll have an unusual celebrity that I'll mention as my target.
I can't wait to hear it. I really can't. It's hilarious.
I mentioned this before a bit, but the issue of time horizons, like we're all competing now on things that that are going to give us 1 month of an advantage over the other. But for me, the big question is, what is the big tectonic shift that will secure one player in the market for the next 10 years? It's not going to be hiring Harvey Specter. It's not going to be even acquiring my startup. Who knows? But for me, it's an open question. What ensures the survival of a legal tech company now for the next generation, not the next month, not the next year, not the next 5 years? I don't have the answer to that. I have some guesses, but maybe that would be an interesting way to end it. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got me hooked.
Yeah.
I want to know what you think because I've not even thought about that. But you are right, because I think it was the founder of Harvey who said on a podcast that legal tech companies are not loyal. Sorry, let me just switch that. Law firms are not loyal to legal tech companies, as in, like you've just mentioned, they can bring one in, they might test it a bit and then be like, no, we don't like that. Or they could be using one for months or even a year and be like, actually, we want to switch now. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how a legal tech company can survive.
The first thing would be to look at what it has that the big incoming players like Anthropic don't have. And that is high quality legal expertise and legal data. Anthropic and others do not have hundreds of lawyers within their ranks who know what it is that lawyers do. It's amazing how much of a gap there is between these big tech companies and the specific domains that actually use their models. Anthropic and friends can go and try to hire some lawyers. Microsoft already tried to do that by its Robin AI move. It's one thing to just acquire legal expertise. It's another thing to have a team of people that understand the law fundamentally and that have enough understanding of technology and AI that they can effectively convert the legal know-how they have into AI capability. So the players who stay alive and win in legal tech in the next 5-10 years, and these are the time horizons we need to be looking at. We need to stop thinking about the next month, about creating a Microsoft plugin and that winning us the battle for the next quarter. It needs to be what keeps us alive in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And that's going to be genuine, like the most cutting edge legal expertise, the highest quality legal data that will enable you to ground your AI systems in the golden, in the crown jewels of the industry. That's what will keep your systems reliable. That's what Anthropic will always struggle to do. And there's only so much legal data available. There's only so many players you can acquire that hold this legal data. It's quite a small group of people. So the barriers to entry will be quite high there for other AI movers. The second will be the likes of Lexis and Thomson Reuters. They still have a lot of money. These are big companies with a lot of firepower. If they are able to pivot, as Thomson Reuters, I think, is doing through the acquisition of my startup, if they are able to pivot by shifting resources towards compute power, towards poaching scientific talent from Anthropic and saying, instead of developing a model that is going to be useful for students on their history homework and for superficial use cases, come and create a super specialized model with us that we will be able to really unleash the power of the law for all people, let's say, and not just for those who can afford it. There are some very powerful arguments that these existing players can make to poach scientific talent, and that's what I'm in the process of doing with my team, from the big AI labs, and create your own AI lab, become a big tech player yourself. I think that's how you compete with big tech. And that's what gives you the best chance of survival over the next decade and beyond.
I think you're right. Yeah, creating your own lab, data hub, collecting it into intelligence. But when you say data, what are you specifically referring to?
It can take different forms. So if we think about a law firm, we can think about their know-how and their precedents, their internal documents, all of their previous deals. In some cases, that is their intellectual property, that is their data, that is their way of approaching things, that is why they get hired on new matters. If you can get an LLM to search through and understand that data, it becomes very wise very quickly. Another example of data would be Westlaw, practical law, the content of the Lexis systems. This is very curated, annotated, pure legal data, so court cases, legislation, but with commentary, with enrichment on top of that by lawyers that make it more understandable, more relevant for legal research. And then I think a very overlooked type of legal data is the legal data that exists in the minds of your living lawyers in your law firm or in your legal tech organization. If you think of some of these big firms, they have thousands of lawyers who every day log on and apply decades, in some cases, of legal training and experience to every problem that they do. If you are able to capture that legal expertise live beneath the keyboard as they type the legal memo, as they draft the summary of the latest court case, as they write the legal opinion, if you're able to capture that live data as it's created and have a feedback loop with models where you help to refine them based on the living and breathing lawyers you have within a firm or within your legal tech organization, that becomes a never-ending stream of legal data that no one else has other than the organization that has your lawyers in it. So that's I speak to a lot of law firms about this principle. Within Thomson Reuters, we are pulling the work of hundreds of the attorney editors who update Westlaw Practical Law. We're pulling that work from behind their screens, those cognitive steps that they're making when they go about their legal work, and we're training our models on it. And I think law firms can do the same. And that is maybe the most overlooked kind of legal data that there is.
Yeah, no, fascinating hearing you say that, actually, because when you were talking about data, I was thinking exactly what you just mentioned, those years of experience, how lawyers are actually thinking, which is something that can't be easily collected because you have to manually go to each person and be like, what do you think on different topics, different subjects, a whole manner of things. So that's the hardest thing to actually collect, and which is why, roundtables are so popular, because it's like a unique opportunity for people to have discussions and collect those insights and whatnot from lawyers and how they think, especially how they're thinking about the future of law and AI and how they use it in different companies and legal teams and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's really, really fascinating, just the potential of this industry and what's happening. And I think you're right in the center of this amazing transformation. So it must be really rewarding for you and at the same time, an incredible feeling to be like, I'm part of history and future.
Yeah, I think all of us are part of it. All of us have our different roles to play, from the trainee to the partner to the legal technologist. I think the most important thing is that you have a healthy dose of optimism. You deal with your concerns and your fears well. I think if you let those become an obstacle to being relevant, you're just going to miss the train. So you want to have to get on the train, observe all the ethical principles, understand all the human dimensions of everything. It's a very complex area to be in. But I think lawyers, frankly, are pretty well placed to deal with this sort of challenge. So I definitely have hope for the industry.
It's nice. I like how we ended on a very positive note there.